Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be breaking down how you can always beat Locke in mid lane. I took my time with making this one because I didn't want to immediately put a video out on Locke the moment he came out, due to the fact that he would of course be subject to change, and I wanted a little bit more experience in understanding how Locke works as a character so that I can really give you guys the most important information instead of gaslighting you into doing the wrong things. So we're finally going to be doing the how to beat Locke here, and he's a really annoying champ. I totally understand that people fucking get their blood boiling the moment they verse up against Locke, because he is very stat check heavy the moment he gets ahead, and he will just 100 to 0 you, and it feels like pretty hard to play into it, because the moment he's ahead, he's just going to run at you. It's really hard to out-trade him and kind of just one-shots you, right? So not a fun champ to verse, but currently he's in a pretty decently balanced state, and he is very beatable because of that reason as well. I'm going to share the key tricks with you here. First and foremost, what you have to understand about Locke, okay? Locke is a champion that has a glaring weakness, and his weakness is that he is a full melee champion with one ranged spell. So what you have to understand is that if he wants to farm minions, he needs to step up to last it and actually get close into melee range with these creeps, which is going to make him very vulnerable to getting traded upon, as you can see. Or he needs to be using his Q to farm from a distance. But you need to understand that his Q is also his main trading spell. So if he's using his Q from a distance to snipe minions, he actually cannot be using it onto you and trade at the same time. Since Locke is an assassin and he's so kill hungry and he's so bound to win trades, that's kind of what his kit does. If he can't trade onto you, you're automatically winning the lane. You're automatically out farming him. He doesn't really have any tools to like completely avoid the laning phase. The people that play Locke, they play Locke to fuck you up. Okay, you can't just play Locke, sit back and chill. Locke is a stat check snowball heavy champion that also is very strong in the early game. So what you have to keep in mind is that you need to be very aware of Locke's Q cooldown, and you need to be positioning away from low health minions so that you're in a position where you don't give him the ability to AoE you and the wave. Let's continue when it comes to trading on Locke, right? Because the way that you lose lane versus this champion is if you get blasted by his trades. The key way that he's going to be damaging you is by hitting you with multiple nails and then proccing the mark with an auto attack or his E, of course. And the moment he procs that mark, that's when you get massively chunked. We're going to see it in a little bit here, where Showmaker eventually gets himself engaged upon by the Locke here. He hits 3 nails, and then that's a massive chunk. Of course, he got barrier in this case to defend it, but that's the thing that Locke tries to do. So for him to do that, right, the more nails he lands, his damage significantly exponentially increases. If he cannot land 3 nails onto you, that's when you're in a position where you're relatively safe. So the trick in that case is making sure, how do we actually make sure that he doesn't land 3 nails? Because 3 nails is when the big damage comes up. If he misses the one of these 3 nails, his damage already massively reduced. So as long as you can dodge one, you're in a good spot. There's just a small problem. His nails slow, right? His Q slows, and that will allow him to then have an easier time following up with the next couple of nails. Every nail slows more the more he actually hits you. So nail 1 slows for I think 20%, nail 2 is then more, nail 3 is even more. So the more nails you get hit by, the worse it's just going to get. So what you really got to bank on is these first and second nails to dodge. How do we dodge the nails from Locke? Well, you got to keep in mind that the projectile's thin as fuck. And because the projectile's so incredibly thin and it's shooting always in a direct line, you want to look at his movement and his character. If he's clicking into you, because it's about like 950 range as far as I know. And that means that if he's clicking into you, he is going to try to, of course, land his nails onto you when he's got it up. So whenever he's clicking towards you, you want to be hyper aware that he can potentially throw out the nail. And the moment you see the animation, my recommendation is that you click to the side of where Locke is standing. So you click diagonally opposite. If you just draw a fucking line here, that's a pretty crooked line, right? But you draw a fucking line there, and then opposite to that line is how you want to be moving. So this is where your cursor's got to go. Ideally, you want to have short clicks around your character. This is kind of the circle you want to be clicking in. The moment you dodge one nail, you're in a really good spot. You can also actively bait out his nails by doing one of two things: by acting as if you're going to trade onto him, or by acting as if you're going to do an action and then actually immediately clicking opposite to the action, so you're baiting out his spells. Or what you can do is you can actually intentionally stand towards low health minions, bait him to throw out his spell because he wants to try and then get high value spells onto hitting you and the minions at the same time. And that's when you're going to be in a position where you can maybe bait out his first Q, and then suddenly Locke is already a whole lot less threatening. Now, let's continue. Because Locke has, of course, different ways that he can trade onto you and he can actually get his W onto you. And his W is passive proc and his Q's onto you. And his W is actually a pretty unique spell that also allows him to really... Yeah, the W is so unique when it comes to trading because it allows him to regenerate a lot. And that makes it pretty hard to sometimes get good quality trades onto him. And he kind of just brute force on that W. Now, what you have to keep in mind is that Locke can get towards you in multiple different ways. Because of his E being a double part dash, what he can do is he can kind of do like this, where he E's towards you, and he can then get in range of landing his Q. Because he's close range, he can now land the Q, because closer range means that you have less time to dodge, and he can then all-in you like this, proc the passive. And trading like this is especially problematic the moment he gets his W, because that's when, if he gets hit, of course, he also gets the regeneration back. But this is kind of like Locke's game. This is kind of what he wants to play. Let's go a little bit later towards whenever he gets his W up, because this is where it's going to get a little bit more interesting. What you have to keep in mind is that Locke can also just get onto you in multiple different relations. He can use his W to just run at you, throw nils. He can use his W and use his E1, throw nils, and then try to proc the nils with his E2. That's another thing that he can do, right? He's very flexible in the way that he then trades and gets close to you. But he wants to try to get close to you. He wants to make it messy and actually get onto you and trade. Now, his W is a spell that has an 18-second cooldown, okay? And he generally is very, very potent in trading the moment his W is actually up. So you want to be quite mindful that the moment his W is up, you can't really just go ahead and brute force trades onto him unless you're very far ahead, of course. And you want to play a little bit with like the small win oriented mindset. What do I mean with that? Chip away at his HP bar while not giving him an angle to actually get close to you. Whenever you're playing mages, that means that you're staying from a distance. Whenever you're playing a champ like a melee champion, you want to, of course, also be quite careful with how you approach getting closer towards the minion wave. Maybe bait out a Q first, then go, because then his trading power is a lot weaker. For melee champions specifically, I really recommend that you figure out the exact matchup specifics of the matchup and understanding how you can stat check him and not. Some champs have an easier time doing that than others. And my recommendation is that you go to LOL Gosu, you type in secondary here, you type in Locke, and you'll find all of the matchups played by pro players and you can just copy that, right? That's also where I got my thought from. I study this every morning. It's completely OP. So whenever he's got his W up, you want to be quite careful. You don't want to engage into like an overextended like skirmish or heavy trade in mid lane, because that's when he's going to be quite strong and he's going to actually be able to win out on the trades. The moment you start losing the trades versus Locke is the moment when you're going to get absolutely blasted. So if you struggle versus him, in the review, go to these trading positions where you really just got blasted and figure out what you didn't understand about him or what you could have done differently that would have led to a position where you didn't take that bad trade. You could have kept your HP high and you'd be in a good spot. Locke is a champion that plays with kill ranges, right? And if you get one bad trade, like in the past, he could just 100 to 0 you, like basically any time. But right now, he needs like one good trade and then he can kill you from like the rest of your HP bar. So you gotta mind that if you're dropping low, Locke is very happy with that. And he can do many creative things also with dives because he gets an E reset after he kills you and he can really fuck you up there. Final thing I want to mention, okay? Two things actually. Level 6, big spike for Locke. Why? His R helps him with all-ins. Starting from level 6 with Ignite, Locke can 100 to you guys, okay? Be careful of that. And they're gonna try that. So what they then generally do is they try to like throw out the R first because the R is a slow. And then they go at you with their full combo and the R slow will then lead the other nils to have a lot easier time landing because when you're slowed, it's harder to dodge skill shots. So his R slow is a really important tool for him to find these all-ins onto you. And it is sometimes extremely hard to understand that he's just going to plain R you. And I want to showcase this here, where in this game, he E's over the wall. In this case, he actually lands the nils first with the R. You see that he tries to all-in. Now, in this case, it doesn't fucking work. It's under the tower, and he's really far behind, of course. But this is just a desperation play. Locke fucking sucks from behind because he's so stat check heavy. And he's really hard to play in the mid to late game. So that's the bit of a segue into the final point I want to make about Locke. Locke players can't end the fucking game, okay? Winning the game, killing the Nexus, Locke players don't know how to do that. And I understand, because Locke's fucking hard in the mid game. Now, the main thing that you got to keep in mind is that whenever you're playing a side laner versus Locke, or whenever you're side laning versus Locke, he has an immense amount of all-in threat. Some Locks also go like the less bursty, more conqueror damage over time build. Keep in mind that even if you're very fat and you're like half an item or an item up on him, stylistically as a champion, if you can force all-ins around this W and he can get close to you, you might just die in the side. So don't get comfortable in isolation. He still has tools to get back into the game. It's just extremely hard to teamfight on this champ. Very overwhelming. His early game skirmishing is very strong because of his E reset, but late game teamfights are extremely hard. If you can get it to that point, you can take small win trades, and you don't really get annihilated by him in the trades, you're in a good spot. And if you do, figure out where you messed up and how you can improve that in future positions. Now, if you struggle versus Locke, you probably also struggle versus Fizz. So for that champion, check it out right here.